Also with the reviews, I feel like once I publish it, it's like, it's kind of out of my hands. Like that's my word on it. Like I don't, but people want to like kind of argue with them sometimes on, never on my page, but on Artillery's page, if they're on there or their Instagram account, people will want to mix it up.
What's the one that hurt the most?
None of them have actually. Not
to have a conversation about you being a critic, being criticized, but I think that is an interesting experience.
No, that's a good.
Because I mostly do puff pieces for people, right? So I think that puts you in a vulnerable place. Yeah, and I find that interesting. I mean, I think it's brave.
Yeah,
you know? I like the fuck you-ness of it.
Yeah, no, I think that it is a thankless task to write negative art reviews or to inject any criticism. And I also feel like I realized recently, I think that's why criticism has gotten so boring.
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Elwyn Palmerton. I'm having you on. You are an artist, but you're also a critic. Mm-hmm. I guess we'll just do the whole spiel and start from where you got into art, but I definitely want to cover all the stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So are you originally from California? Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Like just outside of New York. And I went to school in New York. So I was in that part of that region for, most of my life until I was like 35.
35? That's when you left?
And then in 2014, I went to the Bay Area. I lived there for 5 or 6 years. And then I was here and then went back to the East Coast for a little while.
Okay. So how long was the break from being over here?
2 years.
2 years.
And then I've been here for 3 years now.
3 years. So you went and then you came back after COVID, it sounds like.
Yeah. I always wanted to be here. I've wanted to be here since like after grad school, I think.
Yeah. So what where did you go to school? When did you decide you were an artist? What was your upbringing like? Family? Were they supportive? Were you expected to be an accountant? No, they were
relatively supportive.
You started with enthusiasm and then reeled it back.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot there. No, they were supportive. Like I went to college at NYU and originally I was studying music. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I wasn't actually good at that and didn't want to do it anymore. And I took a semester off from college and that's when I started like drawing and writing, not about art, but experimentally, like trying to write fiction and things. And so I think the fact that those things evolved at the same time kind of helped turn me into an art writer. And also the fact that I was in New York, like basically as soon as I started making art when I was like 19, that from the very beginning, I just saw like every show in New York, or not every show, it's impossible. But,
what era is this?
Just go see like 97 to 2000. Well, I was in college from 97 to 2002. And then then I went to SVA, which is also in New York.
You went right after high school to college?
Yeah. And then
SVA.
Yeah.
Because that means that you're just like, you're 79?
I was born in 78.
78.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But that's a good guess because I think I am a little old for the grade that I was in.
Yeah, no, because I actually, you know what? I did my math wrong because I graduated in 98, not 97, but it just felt so close. Mm-hmm. I was born in 80. So, okay, so then, I mean, that's an interesting scene to me. What's it called? New York in the 90s. What were you up to there? Like, were you living the bohemian life out there?
I guess so. I mean, I was making paintings and going to school and doing whatever else people do.
SVA was the first school, or SVA was your MFA?
SVA was the MFA.
MFA. And what was your undergrad?
New York, NYU.
NYU. Oh, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. What would tell me about like crazy drunken nights? Because one of the things when I went to New York, it felt a lot like Florence, where it was like a walkable city that you could like kind of party in and whatnot. Like what was?
Yeah, I mean that is the appeal of New York for a lot of people. I think is just that you can get drunk and walk home. It's not that much more complicated.
But like, what were
it's driving the boat there?
But like, what neighborhoods were popping back then? Was Brooklyn that big of a deal back then?
I lived in every neighborhood like 3 years before it was cool. So I lived in like or before it was like fully gentrified. Like, so I lived in like South Fifth in like 2001 when there was like nothing below Metropolitan.
Yeah.
And then I lived in Bed-Stuy in like 2006. I lived in Greenpoint. I moved every year that I was in New York, but for inexplicable reasons.
Yeah. It sounds like New York kind of did it to you.
Yeah.
I always hit do you know Soul Coughing the band?
Yeah.
They have a song about New York, I won't go back.
Yeah.
Something about a reminder of the steel I lack. Yeah. I think that city would kick my ass.
Yeah,
was it like that in 97?
Yeah, I think sorry, but
go ahead.
Yeah, I think I was just done with it by the time I was like 30, especially. Maybe even before that. Because there's that, I think this is like a Joan Didion quote, like, New York's great if you're young or rich.
Yeah.
And at some point, I just got old enough and not rich.
LA's bordering on that. It's headed that way.
Has an unbearable quality at this point. Yeah, it's like...
it's getting tough to stay out here.
It's just, the fires are going to screw everything up, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, and people
just in terms of rent.
And people in Nevada were like freaking out too because they know that a lot of people are going to move out there. I mean, not that it's cheap to live in Nevada. I'm not giving up any secrets, but yeah. No,
I've met tons of people here moved to the Sun Belt basically.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
Yeah. So okay, tell me about I guess early writing, and then how did you decide? Like, what exactly? I know they developed together. Was there a first show that you felt like, oh man, you know what? I kind of have to express this kind of stuff.
Well, there's once I was in grad school, there was like writing assignments and classes
that were specific.
Then, at some point everyone had to write about the Whitney Biennial.
Oh wow!
So and then read it out loud. So I'll do that, and I felt really good about that process. And then when I was out of school, I basically just started submitting things to magazines. And got like writing gigs pretty quickly.
Oh, cool.
I've done it inconsistently over the years. Like there's years where I wrote every month or two, and years when I didn't write. And recently has been the most consistent.
Is this like your main gig? Or do you have...
It's not a job.
No, I'm wondering. I don't know.
No, I'm unemployed right now. Last year, I was working for Jillian Burgos, who was running like a leftist candidate for city council.
That's right. You've been campaigning and stuff.
Yeah, so I was just like, I did a few things, but I was just knocking on doors all year long.
City council?
Yeah.
Okay. What does city council do, and like what was the platform? I'm curious because I have a neighborhood council person on. It's the Patreon episode right now, so it's not out. It's gonna come out next week, it's gonna come out next Sunday. But I'm still kind of learning about how neighborhood government works. So as someone who's done the pitch, can you brush it off and give me the pitch?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to start, but there's 15 council members.
Okay.
So, and they're just below the mayor, and they decide all like the budgetary stuff.
Who decides fire stuff? Is there like a fire czar?
That's kind of why I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Is that no? It's like the government and the national or state level. You know, the mayor, whoever puts together a budget, and the city council votes to approve it. And so one of the things that all of the leftist candidates for city council and council members have been banging this drum all year long. Stuff I talked about every day was the budget and the fact that the LAPD budget is completely insane. And effectively, the best way to look at the budget is to frame it like everything except the LAPD has been defunded.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, man. It seems like defund the police had an opposite effect, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm not bashing the movement, but it's. I'm talking specifically about the reaction. Was like we were not heard.
I don't think it built the right type of political power, but there is a thing happening in LA where there has been like almost like a slow going wave of leftist council members getting power.
Okay.
So there's like out of those 15, now there's 4. There would have been 5 if Jillian had won, who he's working for. But this is like 4 people have like basically it's like the values of Bernie Sanders or AOC or someone like that.
Well, the ones that AOC had. Now she's pretty much Nancy Pelosi more and more every day.
I think that might overstate it, but
I don't know. The Iron Dome vote.
Yeah, no, that's bad.
It was like mom and daughter.
Yeah, she's made a poor strategic choice to run to carry water for these people. So local LA politics, there's a ton of room for actual optimism, which is weird because there really isn't any room for optimism in our society anywhere right now.
To some degree, I would say that there's not much, like when you're so far down, there's only one way is up, right? And I think that my hope is that there are people that are getting upset. You know, like Fernanda Sanchez is the council person that I had on here. Unfortunately, I have to reference it because the episode's not out yet. But I trust her, you know, and then there's still people that run like dirty games within the politics and will like use grassroots movements to promote themselves. That's always going to happen. But I think it's hitting a point where like, I don't know, man, especially after COVID, people are like really upset. So the discontent is there for something new. When you say leftist, what do you mean? Is that by definition Democrat, or is that, do they all identify as Democrat? Are they independents? What parties are they running?
I think all people who have run as Democrats.
As Democrats.
I think strategically, the idea of a third
at the
party
city council
is very
Well, I mean, Shama Sawant, but that's like then they. You know who that is, right?
No.
In Seattle, it's she's the what's her name? What's the name of her campaign? I forget what it's called, but it's not the People's Party. She's basically a socialist. She got elected, and then they just gerrymandered her out of position. But she's like become a pretty what is it like? I can't remember what the party's called, but what the group is. But she basically did a grassroots movement, implemented some very important socialist kind of policies in Seattle, and was very popular, very confrontational to all establishment. So there are examples of that, but I think that she's kind of in the Fred Hampton mold of she's Indian, but like that kind of leftist politics. Like sort of radical, challenging stuff. But it makes sense that to the city council, it would be hard to have a radical elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, but I mean, these are people who haven't taken money from corporations or the police.
Yeah. No. I'm not. Kind of yeah. I'm not at all bashing it. I'm just learning the landscape. You're the one that has experience in this. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's gratifying that all of a sudden people are concerned with the city budget because it's having a pretty significant impact on people's lives of
knowing where
half the city's burning down.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So, okay. So then, what was your particular candidate? I mean, I know the election's over, but like, it might give us a sense of things that you believe in, right? Like, what are the things that compelled you to campaign for this candidate? Because I tend, as somebody with a platform, I tend to stay away from having candidates, even though Fernanda Sanchez is running in the neighborhood council. She's like my neighborhood council person. I know her personally, you know. Whereas like the platform, I imagine to some degree you know the platform instead of the person, right?
I mean, I know the person too.
Oh, you
she was around. You know? Like I saw her every week, pretty much.
Yeah,
I wasn't in a part of the. Where I was working closely with her, but the field director was. And,
yeah.
So I talked to her, but I mean that's the other thing that on the local level, I think you can have a lot of access to people, and if you get involved, you're quite close to the levers of power in some ways. Even just like I think there's a ton of change people can make from knocking on doors, and that's kind of why I did that. Like after Bernie lost, I was like, what is the most effective thing you can do if you don't have any money or power, aside from that? And then when I moved here, I knocked on doors for Hugo Soto Martinez, who's another, so like, let's say socialist type candidate, who's on city council now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, but like, what are the main things that
I think like housing justice is
Housing
the main
justice.
one.
Okay,
like,
so these are...
Because the first thing to understand about city politics, I think this is true anywhere in the country, is that the number one donors are going to be the police unions and real estate developers. And so the fact that all that money, these people, you know, they have a very specific vested interest in city council, and no one does. So they're like super low visibility races. You know, people think that they live in a, you know, like a blue city. So their Democratic council person is going to be very progressive, and they're not.
Yeah.
Of course.
No.
Yeah. So like, housing justice, I think like, you know, the rent control thing didn't pass. So, but that is part of one of the things.
So they put it on the ballot.
Yeah, there's a proposition for rent control. And if that had passed, then you could have had city council pass rent control, for instance. And there's other housing things like protections for people who are renting. And LA is actually going to build social housing, which is also a thing that could be really good.
What is social housing? Is that like in Section 8 or?
No, I mean, that would be like what we call public housing. But in Europe, a lot of cities and countries have what's called social housing, which is the city just owns housing, and it's for anyone, and it's nice. And like Vienna, 62% of their housing is social housing.
Wow.
And they have like the highest standard of living in Europe, or the cheapest housing.
Wow.
And Sweden in the 60s built 1 million housing units that are all house most of the people. And Mexico is trying to do that right now. The new president wants to build 1 million
social housing.
Yeah. And so the cost of housing is all just like landlords soaking up a chunk of our paycheck every month.
Is that like Medicare for all would bring down general?
It's pretty so. Yeah. There's an incredible
because they're competing in the market essentially. Yeah.
There's a very close relationship between the logic of health insurance and the logic of housing, because these are both necessities that everyone needs. And then there's this layer of rent seeking that doesn't actually add any value. I mean, and something I would say at Doors all the time is that the whole reason you're paying rent to your landlord is you're giving someone money every month because they already have more money than you. And that's just like capitalism in a nutshell. Is every part of our society is built to channel money to someone who already has more money than you. Yeah. It's like you go to work, your boss is the owner of the company, gets a cut. You go to the liquor store and buy something, and MasterCard gets a 6% cut or whatever it is.
Jesus. Yeah.
It's dark. No, I'm laughing.
No, it's I mean, you have to laugh at some of the dark shit. I mean, not to bring this up out of nowhere, kind of seemingly, but all the people, you know, you just made me think of like all these people that run tech and how some of them are transhumanists.
Oh yeah.
And they want to like have their consciousness transcend their bodies and be uploaded to a machine. And I'm like, who's going to pay for that? How do you pay for that? And that means that our consciousness will have to be stuck in a capitalist wheel of like having a fucking consciousness job so that you can do a service. Like you're doing data entry or whatever, you know, with just your brain. It's like the vision is so depressing. Have you seen this thing in that's happening now that they're banning TikTok with that red note? Have you heard?
I heard of that. I was never on TikTok and I haven't downloaded red note, but I kind of wanted to, just because it's like just,
I think I'm gonna hop on.
Yeah, it's like it's a good troll.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to ban TikTok and we're like, okay, we'll just all go to other ones. Sounds awesome.
But have you heard like what the cultural exchanges that are happening?
I've heard it's interesting.
Yeah, like that people are like realizing that like literally people saying, oh my God, we don't live in a first world country. So people are talking about grocery hauls in China, how impressive they are. And it reminded me of that. I haven't seen that. There's a meme of like, Home Alone, Kevin McAllister walking home with groceries, and they tell you how much it cost in the movie. And it's like these huge bags of groceries, you know. I think the gag in the movie was that they broke. But yeah, dude, it's really crazy. I think that like, I don't know, the information systems that we live in are pretty intense. So and it's just that in particular is interesting because it shows how, I don't know. There's something interesting about like getting to know people as opposed to like all media. Or a lot of like algorithms here, I feel are are designed to kind of make you look at things that make you kind of upset, you know, like when I'm on YouTube, I'm like, I don't want to be angry right now, you know? And like, it's all like sensationalist kind of stuff. I wonder what their algorithms are like. Cause it seems like they're a little bit more chill from this anecdotal experience that people are having of using Red Note, you know? I don't know. It could all be propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, watching the Twitter algorithm just get progressively worse over the past year has been interesting. And I feel like Instagram just keeps getting more annoying. And
well, they're going to do the AI accounts. So like now you're going to be interacting with AI and you don't even know if it's real, which is like legitimate. Like instead of like, it's like ticked as if Twitter was like, you know what, we're going to start making bots, you know, to like inflate our traffic and shit.
Oh yeah, it's just bleak.
Anyway, did you have any more things you wanted to talk about? Because I have questions about being a critic.
Sure, we can go on to that. That's fine.
Okay. I mean, we can always come back if something strikes our fancy. But okay, so you got into it. You had assignments when you were in school, so that's how you've got your interest, and it doesn't pay.
And it doesn't pay. Yeah.
That's my summary of what we've covered so far in regards to that.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah. So I've seen you have like I as someone who has been trolled online.
You've seen me be trolled?
I've seen you respond to trolls as I do sometimes in my stories, and I'm just like, dude, you're totally missing the point of this. So I
did that. I think I did that once.
No, that's fine. I'm not like trying to
decided
paint you as that it was not a good idea.
Responding to people. No, I just decided it wasn't an idea. It's a great idea for me to
That's a health-wise,
respond to people. But there was one where I did. I didn't respond to them. I reposted us.
Yeah.
But
well, that's the best way to get your anger out, but then not have it become a day long back and forth with a fucking asshole.
Yeah, I don't
that's
like
literally just trolling you.
Yeah, I don't like getting into online debates with people.
No,
it just gets your adrenaline up, and it doesn't
and you just feel
anything.
Shitty.
Yeah, there's no good way out of it.
Yeah.
And I also with the reviews, I feel like, excuse me. I feel like once I publish it, it's like, it's kind of out of my hands. Like that's my word on it. Like I don't, but people want to like kind of argue with them sometimes on, usually never on my page, but on Artillery's page, if they're on there or their Instagram account, people want to mix it up.
What's the one that hurt the most?
None of them have actually,
not to have a conversation about you being a critic, being criticized, but I think that is an interesting experience.
No, that's a good,
because I mostly do puff pieces for people, right? So I think that puts you in a vulnerable place. Yeah. And I find that interesting. I mean, I think it's brave.
Yeah.
You know? I like the fuck you-ness of it.
Yeah, no, I think that it is a thankless task to write negative art reviews or to inject any criticism. And I also feel like I realized recently, I think that's why criticism has gotten so boring.
Yeah.
It's like, and I used to do this too, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone else, where it's just like, you're pitching to a magazine to write, your 500 or 800 word review, and then you're going to spend time on it. You're going to go look at it and think about it. And I think the tendency is just to write about something you like, that's interesting, and maybe inject like a little note of criticism into it, and then sometimes maybe if something's like really annoying, write a negative one. But the short format, I think, gives you like room to just be like, okay, we're gonna write a bunch of these. That's what Artillery is doing now. But I think that model,
how many words is that? Like 200?
100 words.
100 words. Oh, okay.
And so
it's like an Instagram caption.
Yeah, so just having a lot of them. And because there's some bad shows out there. It's like there was a really good negative review of a Gagosian show that a different Artillery critic wrote. And it's like, how is this here? Like, this is Gagosian. like people are paying like $250,000 or $1 million for these things, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And occasionally you go there and it's like they have like a Twombly show, or they have these like, banner canonical artists who are actually great. But how is this happening? I don't know.
No, it's crazy. People really I also think that like, I don't know if I referenced it before we started recording or after, but I was talking about Amir Zaki, talking about how little criticism there is in like, or how difficult criticism is within the art space. And I've been reading like applications in a certain context, or artists that artists have submitted, and it really is interesting how like cliched everything is, and how little they have been criticized, and you can tell by the writing because they make bold statements. And in fact, I've kind of gotten to the point where I will look at a work and read the application and just sort of be like, man, I don't see it. The work, it's not in the work. And to me, that is something that you were like, that people are graduating college with a BFA and they don't know how to like actually talk about what's in the work instead of just like musings about things that interest you.
It's a big problem.
Support, yeah.
It's a big problem. It's a big problem in actual art criticism, and it's a bigger problem in press releases.
Yeah.
And probably an even bigger problem, as you allude to, in artist statements.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely shows where you go and the press release says something, it describes what the show is doing and it's or what the work is doing, and it makes sense. And then you go and you're like, this is just propping this thing up. Like,
yeah.
I have some examples, but I'm not sure how publicly I should throw any particular thing under the bus.
You are more than welcome to do whatever you like. I take no responsibility.
Okay, I won't name the show or gallery, but there was a show I wrote about where the press release, the paintings were square paintings, but they had one curved corner, like a quarter circle. And the press release said that was strongly feminine.
Yeah.
It's just like, is every circle
the people
a feminist statement?
People just throw in gender on work that has nothing to do with gender, like, and I look, and there have been times where I've read something and I've been like, I don't see it. And then as I'm like moving on, I go back and I'm like, oh wait, you know what? There was a really vaginal element that I completely missed. So I will give it to them and then I like the work. But it is really hard to be convinced by people's work when they don't know what it's about, because the first thing you do is you look at it and then you're like, does it speak to me? Do I want to know more? And then you move on from there. But it's an interesting art world that we live in. And I also respect that. I've had a few people come on, and this is a shout out, and I have nothing but respect for this person. They support the show and I don't want to alienate them, but Diva Corp, man, people come in here and hate on Diva Corp.
What do they hate about it?
I don't know. I think it's just they feel criticized and like
they don't like the negativity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a problem. I support negativity. I just don't contribute to it because that's like no one would come on my show if I was just like, you're a fucking asshole.
Well, you can't do it in person. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a time and place for there's a way to do it in person. Yeah.
I invited Diva Corp, but I think they need their anonymity and and they haven't responded. But anyway, shout out to you. I see what you're doing and I appreciate that you're making people mad.
I actually had a good idea. I was thinking about that. And I think what you should do is you should have them on and you should use those like voice disguise things where you're like a mob witness on like current affairs.
I've done that before. They're more than welcome to come on the show in whatever capacity they want to. They just haven't responded for whatever reason. Maybe they don't actually support the show and I should have my feelings hurt. Yeah. But no, I think it's an anonymity thing. But yeah, dude, I think it's interesting to like have this kind of, I don't know, everybody's just become so nice, but so fake, right? Like it's this like, you can't have like, it's almost like being confrontational is a negative thing. And I'm like, how do you resolve anything?
I think that's a big problem. I think part of this is also I just have a core of me is from New Jersey, and New York, where I always have I don't know. it's like the valuing of honesty above.
Oh, I can feel
things.
you evaluating some of the things that I'm saying as we sit.
Really?
I'm like, is he nervous or is he just
I'm a little
judging?
nervous. I'm not used to this
totally funny.
type
That's
of
totally
presentation. Then I actually think, but since you mentioned Divacore, I have to say, like, I think like Sean Tatal is much more interesting writer.
Yeah.
I don't want to trash Divacore. I like a lot of the things they write. I think they write really well. I don't agree with all of the things that they write, but when it does sync up, it's very validating to me, because there's a show that I wrote very negatively about and they trashed it too, and it felt really nice.
What show?
It was
I mean, you wrote it publicly, right?
Yeah, it was Divya Mera.
Divya Mera?
I hope I'm saying her name right. That was at Night Gallery.
At Night Gallery. Okay. I'm trying to remember if I saw that show. What kind of work?
Very conceptual work that was lazy.
That's not the
No. One of the pieces was an inflatable Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Oh, I think I saw.
And then there was a big carpet shaped like India, and it's just like it's just like very, conceptual art that just clearly means it like gestures at colonialism or something, or capitalism, and you're like, this isn't. It's a perfect example of what you're talking about, where you can just take an object and then write a press release. It's inflating it to do this thing. And you're like, there's no experience here. Yeah. There's always, I think it's a very common problem that there's like a non-art value that's attached to these things. And sometimes it is political or identity. And sometimes, maybe it could be something else. But then the value of going to art shows and making art, I think, is like some type of experience changes the way you think or feel. And it has to be driven by the form of the work. Yeah. Right. And so that's really hard to write about, I think. It's very, and it, I had an artist say to me that like most criticism is bad because it's just so disconnected from the process of making art, and it's just like layering on these other values and making a narrative that ends up being like an allegory and not an analysis of the form and the experience and the content there. So but my interest has always been getting as close to articulating the content in the work as I can. And I think recently just realizing that the opinion is central to that. Well,
two things. First of all, I'm glad I brought up Divacore, and I meant to because I see that there's like a camaraderie among. Would you say that you're a misanthrope? Or no? Is that too hard of a word?
Maybe I don't know.
Malcontent? I don't know.
Depressive.
Suppressive. Okay.
Depressive. Yeah.
Depressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that there's like
malcontent is a good word.
Malcontent in terms of like, I don't want to be happy about art.
Yeah. I mean, I really do. I actually quite love going to art shows. It really is this is why I write art reviews. And this is even a little like weird for artists. It's like, I'm pretty extreme. And like, I saw everything. Like I saw stuff in New York, like every weekend for years and years and years. I've seen so much stuff. It is my favorite thing to walk around. Like part of it's just like walking around. Like I'd rather...
But like, cinephiles have criticisms of movies they hate, and they still watch them, and it's part of the enjoyment of like just not having your knowledge base, right, and continuing to inform your taste, right? Like as opposed to just like sitting in a vacuum and then being like, I used to look at art. Yeah. It seems like it's an ever evolving. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you go to like if you go to a show and you're not writing, or for me, if I'm not writing about it, or I think most of us go to art shows, obviously, anyone listening to this, and you kind of like form like a kind of amorphous opinion. Like people walk out of the show and are like, oh, that was pretty good or whatever. Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of, when you see something, especially if it gives you any type of feeling or the experience, there's a lot in there that's hard to unpack, and people just kind of go like, that was good. And I don't know. I like writing because it unpacks all of that. Yeah. And it's really, I find that really satisfying to be able to like, I put a frame around it. I figured out how to describe that experience to myself and calibrated my opinion precisely, as opposed to, in this amorphous way. Yeah.
Instead of just the vague feeling of how you think about it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same thing with film criticism, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about criticism that I love is that like there used to be this guy called Bill Cosford. There's a Cosford Cinema named after him. He was a film critic in theater is at the University of Miami. So he was like a big figure in Miami. And I didn't agree with him like 90% of the time, but I knew what the movie was going to be based on how he liked it. You know, like was it going to be the kind of schlock that I liked if he thought it was schlocky? And I remember he gave The Fifth Element a 3-star review, and I was like, yes, this is going to be fucking amazing. And it was.
It is really validating when someone whose opinion you respect likes the same thing. When you agree with someone who you respect, and there's something very differently validating about someone you always disagree with.
Yeah.
Just that disagreement is really fun sometimes.
Yeah. Well, then so the article that you sent me, the one that you wrote for Spunk.
Yeah.
So you're not just like addressing criticism and whatnot. You're writing broader pieces about like the art world and the art market in general, right? So because in that one you talk about The Bomb, which is the Andy Warhol piece that just bombed and didn't sell for like 600,000, I think was the reserve. Right?
Yeah, I just read about the Blake Gopnik was a critic who wrote about that auction. And someone sent it to me, and I just started thinking about it. And something I've been really interested in those essays that are on my Substack is writing about art in the context of history. The way, you know, it's certain things. Art has its own independent logic to some extent, but certain things happen at points in history because something new becomes possible. Like Impressionism, because of everyone knows, because like oil paint, all of a sudden you could go outside with it and buy paint in metal tubes. And, so that's a very obvious example. And then also like do you know like Adam Curtis documentaries?
Normalization, not allergic.
Yeah, that one's good. And there's one called The Century of the Self, where he kind of tells this cultural history over the 20th century. That's kind of like a model for me.
Is that the one with the 6 parts?
Yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Okay, yeah. And the one where you see like Tupac's mom was like a big like it gives you the background to her story and
yeah.
I think I've seen that. What is it? The what of the South?
The Century of the Self. It's about the history of how psychology,
not the South.
Oh, I don't know.
No.
Century of
the Self.
The Self. Yeah.
I misheard you. Is what I was saying.
It's generally just about the way. Psychology has shaped the 20th century.
I see how that informs us, because there is like a long arc in it. You talk about Jeff Koons, you talk about who's the other one? Sola Witt, and how dominant they are in galleries. That was one of the things that stood out to me.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I think that is. I don't know what people teach in college anymore. It seems like the whole system has changed dramatically. So to me, I can't even like assume that people are still learning the things that I thought were valuable. But I always kind of did think of art as for all its flaws. I always say, it's mostly white and it's mostly male. It's still a record, like a psychological or emotional record of what was going on with the collective unconscious, if that's not too cheesy a word. In the history. That's what I mean. Also, it's agreed upon fiction, which is fair enough, but it is how we go back, and it's I guess we can always keep going back and reassessing it, which is the advantage of it, right? Like you go back and you're like, Gauguin married a 13-year-old. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, didn't he give everyone Tahiti
like syphilis or something? Yeah. But, I think that the context of his work, as our understanding of what was going on there has evolved, it also changes his place in history, right? Like, so it's just interesting. And I mean, I think not to take away from the fact that he's one of the first people that was painting brown people, which is also interesting, but it's like all these things. But the point of like, I remember being told in school that like, this is the first painting of a mob of people in Paris, right? I forget which painting it is, but it's just a painting of like that many people put together, which I always thought made me always wonder, like, how many people did Rome have in it? So there might have been paintings before that didn't survive of that kind of like mass of people, but I guess Paris in that era. So anyway, point being is that like the narrative, not only of the work, but of its context within the work, within the history of human experience is really interesting to me. And then I think what in that article you do pretty well is you try to extract that context, right? Like you say something, I forget what it is, that the bomb may also be referencing the nuclear bomb, but you're also talking about how like, yeah, it sounds like a stretch now, but you got to think about it in the context of what people are thinking. So I always think, sorry, that was really loud. So I always think that like, that is an interesting way of thinking about art, and actually one of the more inspiring ways of thinking about it, because if it's just people making shit because they need to make it, it loses a little something about like, about its place in context. Yeah.
The way we historicize these things, I think, can have an impact on how we evaluate it and what ultimately gets made.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a really great Katie Siegel book called Since 1945, where she tells a story like that. There's also another influence on me. But yeah, one of the things she talks about, and I think I allude to that essay, is that like in that period after the nuclear bomb went off, that was on everyone's mind for like a decade. And all those abstract expressionist paintings like Rothko and de Kooning are really and Pollock are reflecting on how apocalyptic that would have felt. Yeah. And everyone's reading like Sartre also. Yeah. So this kind of like, so that makes that period relevant in a way now, because we feel a different apocalyptic sense around climate change, and that's hovering over on everyone's heads. This kind of like, vague but now very imminent fear if you live in LA. And so sorry, excuse me.
No worries.
So where was I going with that?
No, I mean, I think it's interesting. That ties us back into like the civic stuff, right? Like, I think that, I do think that there's a strong sense. I think that I've been on this tip where I think of all of us as propagandists nowadays, because we all have this social media thing, and we spend time constructing an image of ourselves that we project, whether it has to do with our values that we're projecting out, which I do a lot. I and a lot of people do as well, right? Yeah. And to some degree, most of that, even in the context within which I do it, really doesn't do shit, No. I think that for me, what it does most of all, it makes me feel like I'm saying things that people who have jobs couldn't say, who have like a specific kind of like, are teachers and stuff like that. And then that makes me feel connected to them because they can like something. So that in that sense, I don't think it's like completely a waste, right? I think that having people express like-minded ideas is very healing to it, and like I think, which is why I don't think that, I think that like the way that people came out in full force to support different mutual aid efforts during the fire were really impactful, but at the same time, it's not the same thing as like
doing
something. And I think that despite all the stuff that social media gives you, people are being left with this like empty feeling.
Yeah, I have a lot I could say about that. But one of the things is that like, part of the reason I started doing things is I just never really felt like posting is doing politics on some level. Yeah. And also it was like Trump just won again, and everyone's just kind of like, but like the first time in 2016, I think it was like very traumatizing to a lot of people, like just viscerally unnerving. Like I had like a physiological response where I didn't like sleep that night. Really? And that's never happened to me. Like I can conk out for 10 hours any night easily. I'm a sleeper. But and that was when I started wanting to get involved, and I did some things in Oakland, and got more involved in. I was running a artist. This is kind of a tangent, but I got more involved in running an artist run space and curating some shows in Oakland. And then after the pandemic, when I moved here, I'm like still in the state of like someone needs to do something, But yeah, in terms of what you're saying about this empty feeling, it has been, I've done this as a job for the whole last year of like knocking on doors and doing other types of things for the campaign. And it felt great. Like, and something I think about is like, I remember like talking to a few different people at like art openings. Like, sorry, I'm not doing great with the.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. As you can hear it. You can hear
okay.
when you,
Okay. Yeah, like 3 or 4 months before the election, people going like, "Oh, I'm just nervous. I want it to be over with." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And I'm just going and knocking on doors every day and just like feel in the moment doing that and connecting to human beings. Sometimes having a long conversation with someone with a very different life than me.
Yeah.
And all the valley is very diverse, and very creative people and working class people, and it felt like I was doing something, and we lost. It's disappointing, but I still felt like I did something, you know. I built something. We lost by a little bit, so it kind of proves that there's a possibility of like a much better type of candidate in that district and in other districts in LA. But yeah, it's the only job I've had in my life, or as difficult as it is, like I was knocking on doors in 110 degree heat. And the only thing that just felt like really quite joyful at times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. What came up with, the other thing that came up with that you just reminded me when I was talking to Fernanda Sanchez, Lincoln Heights Neighborhood Council president, I'm pretty sure, is I'll bleep out the name of the neighborhood because I don't want to like hype up where I'm recording from.
Okay.
So she was like, basically, I've just watched her kick ass in this neighborhood, her and her compatriots in the neighborhood council. They're all people that are local that got elected to it. She was saying that neighborhood councils don't really work. But at one point we were describing this project that is going up. It's this apartment complex that's being built on this former industrial dry cleaning location for the city of LA. And they've been doing like chicanery where they're not testing the soil in the right places to kind of get bypass that. What's going to end up happening is that unit is already getting built. It's almost completely built, but it's it's going to poison the people that live there. And they've been fighting this battle, and it's been a losing battle this entire time. But when those people get cancer, there's going to be a record of it, right? So the battle, you never get to decide when the work that you're doing really matters, which was a really interesting thing that I experienced from that. So I don't know. I think that like that's especially now, I don't know, people are so dejected and so upset about I try to not invest that much energy in the politics because ultimately it's just one set of rich people against another set of rich people that are like making these candidates say what they want, what they're saying. Yeah. So to me that like to live on, like to invest on that it's a lot easier to just kind of learn what these people want and know what the world is going to look like for me instead of, at that level. But I think that what you were speaking to before about feeling good about going out and talking to people, like I think that that's kind of what's happening a little bit with that Red Note app too, where it's like people are connecting and they're actually seeing that they have commonalities. And I think that a lot of the way that the algorithms work, it pushes a lot of, like, dude, I'm like, I don't want to watch this right wing shit. And YouTube just keeps pushing it. I don't want to watch this, like, because I have very specific shows that I watch that maybe other people watch other stuff that I'm like, nah, you can keep Matt Walsh over there, but, or any of the Daily Caller or anything with daily in it.
Yeah, that's a troubling word. Yeah.
And anybody who purports to be Neil anything, it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, like, it's a strange time to be alive. I think that like there is something to being a malcontent that helps stay engaged in these political, the scenarios where you might lose, but you're not going to make it easy for them. I like that sentiment. Like, if they're going to fuck you, why make it easy? Yeah.
I couldn't invest that type of emotion in any Democrat who is taking corporate money. Yeah. So that is, I think the money thing is
pretty hard.
It's the central thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much investment in like the personalities and identities of these people that it's like, no, they are just tools of these corporations, and that's going to determine how they act. And it's not like the money is influencing them. The person who is open to taking that money is the person who's going to run for power in the first place.
Yeah.
They're not selling out. They were born sold out.
Yeah. No, they don't have opinions. They don't believe in anything. They're like literally nihilists.
Yeah.
Who are willing to take money for and every last one of them. You know, and they always like. I mean, the way that AOC came on the scene was so one-term senator and all of that shit, like completely covering up the fact that Obama's responsible for those cages, standing there in that white outfit. It really is like, there's no morality there. So I feel like at the grassroots level, at the community level, there's more of a chance to really get a sense of like,
and there's a better feedback loop. Like you can see what your city council person, like you're talking about with like ground pollution or something. You can see whether it gets fixed or not. You know? So, but yeah, that's why any change is going to have to come from more people being involved and some sort of mass movement, whether it flows through unions or climate activism or just people becoming more involved because their lives are getting worse.
No, I know. So, I mean, it somehow we got stalled from the whatchamacallit. I think that like Trump winning fucked so many people up that it's really hard to get back to the kind of class consciousness that we had in the 2010s in the Occupy Wall Street era. And to some degree, it's hard to not feel like there is an active effort in that, right? If I run the algorithms, why wouldn't I make it?
It's all there. The class conscious, the class consciousness isn't there, but the discontent is there. Yeah, but like, that's what the Luigi thing is all about. It's like people desperately want an avenue to express their total discontent with everything. And you know, like no one trusts mainstream media anymore across the political spectrum. No one's speaking to anyone. And so
I think the mistrust is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing too. And people are pretty alienated from both parties. Even Trump winning, I think, is a vote against the establishment, and it's not good, but that is how people see him. And he did speak more to working class people. Like he campaigned, it's all bullshit. Like,
no, for sure.
Deporting immigrants and tariffs are going to make everyone's life worse. But I saw that from knocking on doors in the Valley of just like a lot of just working class people are like, none of these politicians care. They're not going to do anything. Nothing's going to change. And so that's another thing that I don't think the Democratic Party wants to win, but they don't really understand that like to win, you actually have to, it's not just campaigning. You would actually have to improve. If you actually improved anything for anyone at any point, you could build momentum off of that.
Yeah, but that's
nothing gets better.
Yeah, no, they don't. I think anyway. I'm not gonna get it too
sorry.
Deep. No, I don't want to get too deep into like doom and gloom. But I just really think that, I'll say this: Americans do not care enough about foreign policy to understand that all of this neoliberal shit that's happening outside of our borders is coming home to roost. You can only, and now that there's competition outside, why not take the wealth from inside? You know? So I think that that's kind of what people are having on Red Note. And on a real sense, it's really hard to fight that. You kind of just have to make sure that you're one of the people that survives. And that's a very Latin American mindset, you know, an immigrant mindset is sort of like, because at some point you can't take care of everybody. You just got to take care of your people, you know? And it's crazy. It is a really interesting thing. I don't know. Any last thoughts on art criticism or what's it called? Because I really do. I think I want to stress the fact that I think it is important. Bitterness is an important expression, a part of an expression. Discontent is important to express, and I think that you know, like I'll say this: I'm not a huge Trump fan, but I think that when people like alienate MAGA as all QAnon and all of that shit, like they fucking challenge their politicians in ways that Democrats are afraid to. Democrats are so afraid to say anything negative about their people in the off chance that the other side gets an advantage. Whereas like they'll just fucking tear Trump apart over H-1B visas and shit like that. Like it's all, you know, so I don't know. When I see stuff like that, I remember that the politicians are pieces of shit, but like these are real human beings, you know?
Yeah. And that has crossed my mind. There does feel like there's a connection to this lack of criticism and this lack of everyone's just rooting for something. I don't know if it's a function of like social media. It's like liking things has become our default way of performing our taste or whatever. But yeah, people should, you know, exercise that. And the shock that comes from people getting negative criticism and people pushing back, it feels like people like really aren't used to it. Yeah. And then they're like, they're defensive in weird ways. One of the things I love about Diva Corp and that they did was Sean Tatal. Like Diva Corp is basically totally stolen their entire format from Manhattan Art Review. Like Sean Tatal invented that in New York, and Diva Corp is like a spin on it. It has some originality in his voice and whatever. But
I stole the podcast from somebody.
yeah. So, but I think Sean Tatal should get all the credit for like really injecting harsh criticism into this moment where it didn't exist before. But he just said he hated Diva Corp, and
really,
and Diva Corp posted this thing that said, he made a T-shirt that said, literally quoted him saying, "Let me get this out of the way. I hate Diva Corp."
Because everybody's asking him.
Yeah, and then he just posted like love under it. Like that's the way to take it. Just embrace the fact. It's like the Warholian thing. Like, Like don't read what they say about you. Just count the inches. So that felt like a very dignified way to take public criticism, and just be like, oh, they're talking about me.
That's something that people should learn from fucking Trump.
Yeah, he thrives on it.
It's not what they say about him. It's what they and then they just keep giving him more stuff. You know, I mean, it's such a wild political world that we live in, and it really is like, I don't know. I think that it's going to be interesting to see now that everybody's ambition is not to stop this guy getting elected. Like, what do we do now? Because they're going to bring out somebody else, not the next person is going to be Hitler too.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I have no idea how it shakes out. I could see it being, well, I don't know. I can see Trump really shitting the bed with his base, and any of the things he's doing could just crash the economy. Like if you start deporting immigrants, and you could destroy like the food production system in this country. And
I'm a little skeptical of that because
I think he's gonna get. I don't think businesses don't want to do things like that.
I think he's just doing the same shit that every politician does. He tells people what they want to hear, but the reality is that Obama was more aggressive with deportations. Reality, true. You know, and so like he would really, I'll give you the possibility that he will beat Obama's deportation numbers in either of his terms. Like that is maybe a possibility, but what we've seen from him is that he likes to fucking hide and do shit that, like, you know, he's gonna do a tax cut. That those are the bad things that are really, really gonna stand out. You know, like the super tax cut for the rich, the overthrowing of Roe v. Wade. Those are the really like memorable stuff. He also did things that people loved, like the First Step Act. He like freed so many black people from prison, which is crazy. Like, and I think that like one of the things that's very difficult as somebody who like wants the country to go into a more left leaning place is that you can't even say these constructive things about like, hey, this is why black people started to vote for him. You know, whereas like, oh, your support. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're fucking crazy. Yeah. You know. So anyway. That's my bone to pick. That's my negative criticism of the Democrat, of my peers and my friends in the who we on theory agree on a bunch of shit, but we can't get it together.
No, it's really important to acknowledge why he won.
Yeah,
like he's actually funny too. So.
Yeah, no,
I mean he's loathsome in a lot of obvious ways, but he said things that made me laugh. Like there's a super clip of him doing funny stuff that's hilarious that I saw. It's just like
the only reason I know that he's getting so much money from Miriam Adelson is because he said it.
Oh, he said
he says shit he's not supposed to. So you know where like it's a really weird thing to like kind of like be like he was like he literally in a speech it was like a straight up whore. He was saying it. He was like, I mean, sorry, I know that that's a very hard word. I apologize for using it, but I mean, in people's ears.
No.
But he's like, he's literally standing there, and he goes, "Why did I move? Muriel Madelson asked me to move the embassy to Jerusalem. I moved the embassy to Jerusalem. It's really, really fucking weird,
amazing.
you know." And then the weird thing with this ceasefire is that she likes Netanyahu.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, that honesty is refreshing to people.
Yeah,
because everyone knows every politician is like that if they're taking corporate money, and yeah.
He's like literally doing the thing that people use, the joke that I don't know which comedian said, but that they should wear NASCAR suits.
Yeah, he's literally doing it.
He's like, I'm selling out. And, you know, so I think that does resonate with people. But anyway, well, any parting thoughts now that I've made you talk about Trump as a human? Yeah, you're getting canceled.
Yeah. No, I don't have any.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
That was my parting thought. Is I think that we need more like intellectual debate and criticism. People in the art world need to be a little more
thick-skinned,
yeah, and a little tougher with each other, and also read more criticism from other periods. Like we need more people with knowledge of art history and knowledge of what discourse was happening, because there's things in that can be brought back that can inform this, because it started to feel like there's a feedback loop or something. It's just the same stuff gets said over and over.
And I think that like white knighting and protecting people is kind of a counter to that criticism. Like I think there's the story of the tennis player who has a coach. There's a Ukrainian or Russian woman who plays for Ukraine, and she has a coach, and they want everybody in social media wants him fired. And she's like, he's a great coach. I went from 200 to like winning Wimbledon, and like he's one of the best things that has ever happened. She's worked with him for like 6 years, and everybody's like, we don't like the way he talks to her, and she's like, I don't have a problem with it. And it's really fucking crazy, like that anybody would think that they could interject on that, and like it's literally a guy critiquing her playing and getting her focus to play. And I've watched the clips that people are upset about. It's not crazy.
I'm not familiar with this, but I think that people, I mean, Trump won, so like whatever identity politics is doing, it's not resonating with people. Like I understand the logic of it, but it's like people. But
I think that in that particular instance, there's like they're denying her the agency to choose her own coach, which I think is very problematic. And then when that translates into like people people sticking up for minorities, then it becomes real condescending, right? Because you are taking someone's agency and speaking on behalf of them.
Oh yeah,
that whole thing, like whatever academia has come up with that has led to that, to me is fucking woof. Well, that's part of why you're losing.
It also
criticism works.
Yeah, and it also becomes like a way of defending politicians who aren't representing those people.
Yeah.
Like I saw someone, and this is just a random person on Blue Sky who I don't know how many follow, but they were saying like, oh, people just look for the first black person they could blame. It's like, she's the mayor of the city that's burning down. What are you talking about? Like that her identity is the mayor. That's that's an immensely powerful position. You know, and then to overwrite this form of something else onto it to defend. It's like you're just defending power. That's not a critique of power anymore. It's insane.
My favorite Democrat identity fail was, I'm Italian. I grope people.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's what's his name? The guy whose brother was on the New York guy. I keep thinking Corleone, but the guy whose brother was on MSNBC on CNN, and they were doing COVID. He killed a bunch of people by putting them all in the nursing homes.
Oh yeah, the Cuomo.
Yes. It's Cuomo-sexuals and all those people like that.
Everyone had a crush on him for a little while, and there was some discourse about nipple rings. I remember. Well, that I don't want to remind myself of.
That's like the delirium of like that's how crazy Trump made people. Anyway, well, thank you so much for doing the show.
It's been fun.
Yeah, and then where can people find you? Do you have a Substack? It's Elwyn Palmerton.
It's Flowers Garage.
Flowers Garage.
The actual URL is Elwyn at Substack or Elwyn.substack.
Okay.
But they can find it from my Instagram. My Instagram is just Elwyn Palmerton.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then your Instagram is at .Palmerton, or is it just one word?
I think it's just Elwyn Palmerton.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
All right. Well, and then thank you guys for checking us out. If you like the show, like and subscribe. You startled that I'm talking to somebody that's not in the room. Like and subscribe, comment wherever you can, or wherever you're allowed to comment on the episode. And we have the Patreon. $5 a month gets you early access, and we got some more stuff. I'm definitely thinking about doing what's it called? AI prompt engineering thing about like how to figure out how to draw stuff on with AI, because it's actually harder than people think. You
don't need to have people like me in here. You could just interview
a computer,
chatbot.
Yeah, chatbot,
probably save you a lot of trouble.
You are an art critic.
You can do dead people too.
Yeah.
Oh,
that'd be creepy. You
could do like Picasso.
I like these ideas. Yeah, brainstorm in the comments if you have stuff that you want to do. I'll probably do some of that stuff for free, but as a live stream. But maybe I'll do the live stream and then I'll just put that on Patreon, and that's where you can watch it if you don't catch the live stream. I think that's a decision has been made. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. We'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related.